for episode 2 of Regs and Bacon. Got a few little things I got to get straight before we go to the party. Hope everybody's having a good morning. I know I am. I had a few little technical difficulties that we had to get over. Funny thing about cameras, if you don't charge the batteries, they don't work. So it is freezing cold today. So give me a second and I will be ready to roll. We have a good episode this morning. We are going to talk about pollution being racist. So let's get to it. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, so this morning, if we have a few little technical difficulties about audio, bear with me. As y'all learned from the last episode, this is in fact live TV. And on live TV, all things are possible or not. We we had a video last week that played. For me, it was great, but you guys didn't get to see it. So we will have that today. We will have the lost videos of Adley. We also had issues last week where we had a few things that went south, and I just kept mumbling through it. So if you watched last episode and you felt like there's a lot of just rambling on, well, that was Brad being both the speaker, the producer, director, and the button clicker. So, but we're gonna fix all that today, and we're gonna have a really good time. So if you're up early this morning and you guys are you're up early this morning and you say this is worth my time, should I go lay back in bed? You're gonna stay here. This is really good. So last time we had a discussion about what topic would be our first show. And I said, when I sat down at our staff meeting, I said, I want to do pollution being racist. And they said, you can't. It's your first episode. We try not to be political or conspiracy or just stressful. I said, but this is a really good topic. And it stopped there. And I said, well, if we can't talk about race, that's the problem. And the response to that was it was nothing to do about not being able to talk about race. It was everything to do about taking an inanimate object and accusing it of being hateful. And I said, no. I said, this you're gonna like, you're gonna really like. So we went ahead and ran the Keystone one because Keystone material is pretty straightforward. There's not a lot of emotion attached to it, except for those who've lost their jobs or those who are on the environmental side. But as far as the facts are the facts. There's no argument of where the Keystone was supposed to go and how many barrels of oil and so forth. So we went with that. It was a good one. Enjoyed it. Enjoyed talking about it. Got a lot of decent feedback. Got some interesting mail. And I should read those emails online. Somebody sent me as a joke under an anonymous email address, a fake email address, like viewer review. Why do you suck so bad? And it's like, well, because our goal is to suck less. It's not live TV is live TV, but today it's going to be good. So without hesitation, let's start off our beautiful day. I'm going to share my screen with you real quick. By the way, just a little background. I'm Brad. I am with Adley Services, and I'm an engineer with Adley Services and inspector, lawyer, all those, a lot of titles, a whole lot of titles with these guys. Great company. They're so excited that they're expanding. I was hoping to be able to announce all kind of cool stuff. We have a bunch of recent new hires. Fortunately, press department wants to do a press release, and I can't preempt the newsroom. That's a no. Anybody who works for a company knows that the biggest no-no is you can't release information before the newsroom does for official news press release. But we had a lot of cool new hires this week, and we have a lot of great stuff going on. It's very fortunate in this time to be able to grow and give some more great jobs for people. So without further ado, let's have some fun. So we talked about this last week in our meeting, and I said, is pollution racist? And they said, no, you can't. And I said, no, this is a really cool topic. I think it's going to be at the forefront. And it's like, we don't want conspiracy theories. We don't want this far left, right, just keep it simple, man. Keep it light. It's freaking 5:30 in the morning. Nobody wants to hear about how the world's going to end in 36 hours, 5 minutes, and 2 seconds. Want to know about cool stuff. I said, I'm telling you, it's going to be cool. So, all right. So I bit my tongue, stayed home. We did Keystone. The next, like 2 days, I see Fox News, seeing all of them start running articles about how the racial issues with pollution and chemical regulation. I said, I knew it. I knew I should have went with my gut on this one. We would have been the first ones to run that story. Instead, we sat on the sidelines and we got beat by big media, which I guess is not a bad thing because they do it for a living. I do it to drink a cup of coffee. So, with that being said, let's delve into it. So Fox News, Biden administration cites climate change as a racial justice issue. So, okay. Give you a quick little vocabulary for today is that Cancer Alley. We're going to talk about that. So, the big question is, what's Biden going to do about this? So, Joe and the boys. What has Joe and the boys been up to? Well, if you go to whitehouse.gov, your official source of all things White House, executive order on protecting public health. We talked about this last week. We talked about this and a few different things. Let me see if I can find the one. Look at this. Revoking the Keystone Pipeline. See if I can zoom in a little bit, get y'all some better. All right, so we talked about this executive order. You're no stranger to it. But we skipped over the first part. If you go to section policy number 1, it's to listen to science, improve public health, protect our environment, and hold people who pollute accountable, including those who disproportionately harm communities of color and low-income communities. I don't know if that's grammatically correct, but we're not going to fault you for that one, Joe. I'm an engineer and I can barely spell my name. Joe, English is my second language. So, sorry, I had to get a cup of coffee, and that's a no-no. So, Joe has said that he is going to deal with pollution that disproportionately harms people of minorities. Okay, so we know what Joe's up to, and so how does Joe handle all this? Well, Joe does what Joe's been doing lately. He signs executive orders, which you've seen, and he appoints people. So if you go to EPA.gov, you have all these great people that have been appointed to the EPA's great thing. So one thing of interest is this. Who you don't see on here is Secretary Michael Regan. But we know he's a key player in this because if you look right here, let me get rid of this junk. If you look right here, North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality, the Director of Scheduling Advance, Kathleen Lance, Kathleen Lance, joins, she was Michael Reagan's secretary in North Carolina. And so, not secretary, Secretary Michael Reagan's special assistant. It's hard confusing, the assistant versus secretary, so forth. So anyway, people are in place. Guess who's not on this page? Mr. Michael Regan. And his people are here, but he's not because he's the secretary and he has to be conformed 5:30, guys, work with me, confirmed by Congress. So we are going to take a quick break to view the lost video of Adley that got lost last week. Remember, we got bills to pay here too, folks. And we are going to talk about Racial issues and pollution, and Mr. Michael Reagan. If you don't know who Michael Reagan is and you are in the arena of the EPA and things of that nature, you really, 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 really want to pay attention, because Mr. Michael Reagan is going to be very important for our upcoming stuff. So let's pay a few bills real quick and check it out. I got you this time, which means you probably won't be able to hear this.
At Adley, we pride ourselves on quality. When an Adley contractor walks in, you get much more than the person. You get supervision and quality control of his work by a licensed professional engineering firm, as well as the support of his peers at Adley. That is the Adley difference.
So bills have been paid. So who's Michael Reagan? Well, Michael Reagan is
cardio burns fat, right?
Oh, no, YouTube. We're not playing this game. Michael Reagan is Biden's pick for Secretary of EPA. So if you go and Google it, you can find this is what shows up with Michael. Go to his Wikipedia. You can get all kind of good information about him. So in a nutshell, I'm going to tell you about this guy. He created or joined or was basically the pushing force behind the Environmental Defense Fund. And when it was created, everybody said, well, this is just going to be a waste of time. What is it actually going to do? And it was generally the consensus that it's pretty powerless, and its intentions were in the best place, but it really lacked the teeth to go and make a change. Well, they were wrong. Because of his work in the, and like that's Mr. Michael right there. See him? Because of his work with this, he got put on the radar of one Mr. Joe Biden. What do you know, Joe says one of my hot button issues is racial disparity and pollution. And what we're talking about is this. If you haven't figured it out yet, they don't exactly put chemical plants in the middle of Rodeo Drive. They don't put chemical plants in the Audubon Zoo, Audubon neighborhood of New Orleans. They don't put chemical plants in Manhattan. You know where they put them at? They put them out in the country, or they put them in areas where real estate's cheap. Well, people who are impoverished or people who are impoverished, they tend to live where real also, and so you have an issue where when you look at who's being affected by the adverse effects of pollution, it's not your hedge fund operators, it's the people who are living in these areas. And so Biden felt that the disparity where the minorities are being affected more per their percentage of population for these issues was something he wanted to address. So what does he do? He doesn't go to, he signs an executive order. Great. But what is he going to do? What he did was he goes out and says, who's my guy? Well, in North Carolina, you got this guy who is very big on and be able to move on racial disparity and environmental issues. And so he creates this Environmental Defense Fund, or it's one of those organizations. I keep calling that. It might not be called that, but it's basically doesn't have much teeth. But because of his action, it put Michael Reagan on the radar of Joe Biden. And so now we have a guy who is very passionate about minorities and so forth being disproportionately affected by pollution, who had just a platform but really no teeth. And it gets him the most powerful position of environmental enforcement in the most powerful country in the world. And so now we went from a guy who was passionate to a guy now who walks softly and talks softly and carries a big stick, right? But he doesn't talk softly because he knows what his goal is. He knows where he needs to be, and so the question becomes, what's next, right? And so we go look at it, and we go here. That was a separate article where we're just reinforcing that blah blah blah. Who all the other people coming in? We're not going to talk about that. We'll say it for a later date. So, oops, no. Okay, so this article was really interesting because frankly, Michael's got a huge row to hoe right now because some people would say Trump left the EPA in shambles. Other people would say Trump reduced the EPA to the size it should be. It's whatever aisle you're on, whatever side of the aisle you're on this. But so what Trump felt the EPA was too overburdensome, too fat, too over-regulatory, too intrusive. So he really skinned down, took a lot of regulations out, and really reduced the footprint of the EPA. So Michael one comes in trying to push a new concept and a new, enforce Joe's mandate that's going to be a priority for him. Excuse me. And he does it with an agency that really has not much left. I mean, it's down to skin and bones. So he's got to rebuild the agency, but his hands are tied on that because Trump's passed. Trump was tied too about there's rules about enacting regulations. So he's got to rebuild the EPA, and then he's got to address an issue that is not very easy to address, right? How do you deal with the fact that chemical plants are in less desirable areas? We're not going to, gets back to that whole thing, not in my neighborhood. And I know what you're saying. You say, well, you keep saying that racial disparity and so forth. How do you know? How are you going to prove it? You've said this word, this phrase 100 times. And it's 6:08 in the morning. We've now reached the 6 o'clock hour. And you say, I'm not. Like, I am so, if you want to go and argue that, there's so much information out there about whether or not it's an issue of race, if it's an issue of, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, issue of media coverage. Those are all great points, or not, depends on what side you're on. You can have, that is so for another show, because I can tell you right now, that is something I don't want to go down. We're really focused on how does it affect you in the here and now. So now that we know what Joe's up to, we know who Michael Reagan is. Sorry for camera not focusing. It's not having a good morning either. It needs a cup of coffee. You know who Michael Reagan is. You've been babbling for how long? Where is this going? Well, we're going to show you where it's going to go. But unfortunately, it is early in the morning, and you guys y'all cannot listen to me babble this whole time. So you guys are going to need a break. So let's do our Elon moment of Zen. So I will find it. There it is. So let me tell you about this video. Elon's given this, and don't pay attention to the $1 billion advice given for free junk. People put all kinds of stuff on videos, and it really takes away from the goodness. So Elon's giving a little speech to an audience, question and answer session. Richest guy in the world, or second, I never keep up with it. So while he's there, a kid asked him a question.
Hello, my name is Elliot Owen. I'm a freshman here. I'm very interested in the Hyperloop. I made a small working model for my senior project.
Oh, that's cool.
And one of the major problems I ran into was tube tolerances. So I'm wondering if you can comment on, problems with tube tolerances and thermal expansion if you're building a 350-mile long steel tube.
Okay, so Elon's got 3 choices at this point. He can be like, wow, there's so many technical things there. We don't have time he could punt. Like, we don't have time to get into it. It's really just wait and see. Like, that's a true executive answer, right? Punt and make it seem like, I don't know, I couldn't tell you. But at the end of the day, Elon can also say, you're not smart enough to understand this, but I don't think Elon ever do that. Or third, he can get in the trenches and start saying, like, asking this guy very specific questions. So think about it for a second. What is Elon going to do at this point? Is he going to say, that's so complicated. There's so much. You just, why don't you come work for me? Congratulations on being such a smart kid. Just, fluff it up and give him a bunch of bull, or is he going to be like, well, tell me more about your thing or this or that, and kind of be nice about it. So what do you think? Well, if you know Elon, he will tell you first and foremost, he is an engineer. Check out what he does to this kid.
Well, what was the ratio of the pod to tube diameter?
About 2.5-inch internal diameter and about 20 feet long.
Right, but the pod diameter to tube diameter?
The pod was only a few hundredths of an inch smaller than the inside diameter.
That's the problem. So you actually want the pod to, you want a sort of a ratio of the called pod area to tube cross section to pod cross section of about 2. So the pod only is like half the cross sectional area of the tube.
So you can search on Facebook for Kindle Viral, kind of viral. I'm sorry. You can see it right there. How cool is that? My man gets in the weeds, in the weeds with Elon. Like, that is so cool. He could have easily been, man, but that shows you he's the engineer first and foremost. And like I always tell my kids, be passionate about what you do, and you'll have a great one. So, all right, let's get back to work, folks. So we know who Michael Reagan is, but what and where is the question, right? And so, hey, we'll play around with some things. So here we go. Cancer Alley. Do you know Cancer Alley? Has anybody? Allée du Cancer in French. That's nice. I tried to find Jacob Street for you guys, and see how he says right here that one street in St. Gabriel's, Jacob Street. And what happened was basically almost most insane amount of people on this one small street all got a specific type of cancer, and there's no such thing as coincidence, right? So they, so what they did was, the news said, wait a second, how do all these people get cancer on this one street? It doesn't make sense to us. So what they did was this: they decided, look into it more, and come to find out there was a section of the world that is just, the cancer rates are insane compared to the rest of the world. But here's the big issue with this. Being in a poor person in the United States and being in a minority, it has its own challenges too. The question was always, do these cancers and so forth come forth from other lifestyle, I don't say choices, because it's hard to say you eat bad because it's a choice when you're poor. That's not right. But does it come from other sociological factors as opposed to purely, pollution? For instance, you lose your job, you get divorced because you lost your job, you're about to lose your house and your car, and so you drink all the time, and you have liver cancer, and you live next to a plant. So is the liver cancer from the plant, or is it from the alcohol? And same thing with lung cancer. Typically, unfortunately, in our impoverished communities and minority communities, we see a higher use of tobacco. So is the lung cancer from the factory next door, or is the lung cancer from the tobacco use? And so this has been a huge issue for environmental people trying to get over this, because what is the problem? And then so this Cancer Alley, and we're going to talk about more about what it is, but there was one issue. NPR did this really cool article, and is the trial lawyers right, or is the chemical plants right? You listen to the trial lawyers and the people who were ate up with with cancer and so forth, they absolutely blame that plant next door because, you know, it has a lot of money and so forth. But at the end of the day, you know, the plant says we don't produce any more pollution than naturally occurs. Like, I'm sorry you're sick, but just because we have, you know, we have a bank account doesn't mean we're liable for this. So, you know, that is going to be that's always the huge debate. But so this NPR article, I think, is probably written more on the eyes of the people, the good guys, if you will, not the evil chemical plants as they are portrayed, in the eyes of them about how, you know, they had all this cancer. And according to the NPR article, there is a neoprene plant that was owned by DuPont that made this chemical like I think it's, if I can find it, it's like chlorpine or something. What is it? It's like chlorpine. It's oh, there it is. I found it. Let me zoom in a little bit. Chloroprene. And so the thing with chloroprene was this EPA, this DuPont plant, that which eventually got sold to a Japanese company called Dinka, produced an insane amount of chloroprene, but it's, according to EPA, it really wasn't that toxic of a chemical. But then EPA said, yeah, you know what, come to find out, it is a pretty toxic chemical. It can cause cancer at these levels. Well, they looked at the levels that the Duncan plant was producing, it's way too much. So Duncan plant agreed to reduce it and so forth. But if you read the article, and it's on NPR, and it's entitled, if you read the article, it's basically the cancer rates there are insane for this. And, you know, the question becomes, you know, you have a bunch of people with cancer and there's a chemical plant. Doesn't necessarily mean the chemical plant did it. There may be other causes for that. So let's talk about this place. I tried to find it on the map and I could not. However, this is a really cool picture of all the chemical plants. So what is Cancer Alley? Cancer Alley is a section of land between a section along the river, Mississippi River, between Baton Rouge and New Orleans. What it is New Orleans is probably one of the biggest ports in the world, right? And it would therefore make sense for one of the biggest ports in the world to have be a mecca center for chemical plants, because chemical plants need raw ingredients and they make a product and they ship it out. And you can get raw ingredients one or two ways. You can get it shipped in or piped in. And there's a lot of pipelines because of oil field. Look at all these chemicals that are made. I mean, right here is New Orleans. Get my cursor back. So right here, you're looking at the New Orleans area, like Lake Pontchartrain, right? ConocoPhillips refinery. And up here-ish is Baton Rouge. I got a better picture. But holy moly, look at the chemicals made. And this is not a really good picture to see. You know, you can't zoom in on it too well. You know, but just insane amount of work done there. Well, also, as luck would have it, this area along the river right here is where a lot of very, very poor people live. Probably some of the poorest people in the state, because it's just it's not a very desirable place to live unless you want to work in a chemical plant. There's no beaches or things of that nature. Good people, good community, hardworking people, some of the nicest people you ever met. But at the end of the day, their tourist industry is severely lacking there, for lack of a better term, right? So you can see, you know, how many chemical plants or how many chemicals are made along that section of Mississippi River. It's insanity, right? And I don't know what this is. This might have a map on it. Let's see. No, just more pictures. Oh yeah, I use this for pictures. Like you could. That's if you're looking down the Mississippi River. If I believe right, that's the Hale Box Bridge. It looks like, or Sunshine. I can't tell. Look at the plants there. So again, to get your bearings straight, I just showed you a picture that went from about here all the way to about here. So this little section right here is where all those chemical plants are located, because you know you have the Port of New Orleans is right here is one of the biggest ports in the world, I think, because all the come up through the Mississippi River, and therefore these plants can get their chemicals in and chemicals out pretty cheaply as opposed to if they were located somewhere else. So here is another picture that has the New Orleans and Baton Rouge, and that's, like I said, it shows you this. This is a really cool website that even if you take the content out of it, the way they did this, it's back to the bone. I wish I had skills like this so I could do fun stuff like this. But you can see this website as you scroll down. And it makes down. I wonder if the page down button works or if I'm asking for trouble. So it just goes through. All right, so where are we going with all this? What's the point? Well, the point is this. You're one of these chemical plants, you better be ready, because we always joke about you don't need to be the first sheep to escape the goat, the first sheep to escape the wolf, but you can't be the last. Well, my point is this, is that I've done shown you that one, Joe's priority is for the EPA is racial disproportionate disparity for pollution. Two, I've shown you that he's hired Michael Reagan, who was one of the pioneers on the forefront. I say pioneers, but he was charging the battle before during a time when the administration really wasn't important to him. And three, I've shown you where the big issue is for racial disparity. So if you're one of these people if you work at a plant or you're in charge of a plant it's on my picture right here. Ladies and gentlemen, introducing Michael Reagan. If you don't know him yet, you will. I feel like the enforcement is going to be pretty tough on that. And so getting back to what the show does, the show is never ever about answering these questions about who, racial or this or that. The show is always about showing you what's out there and giving you a view of it. So now listen, the EPA, the Cancer Alley, or I could call it Cancer Alley, let's call it the Lower Mississippi River, Cancer Alley. The Lower Mississippi River is not the only focus of racial disparity. I mean, we all know about Flint. Flint was a complete debacle from the get-go. If you don't know about Flint, basically what they did was they changed the water supply, didn't really do the homework on what infrastructure they had. And the new water supply is called the chemical reaction. They pretty much dumped lead into every pot and bathtub of everybody that lived in Flint. And Flint is one of those cities that is, for the most part, majority minority. Let's say it's got a huge African American population compared to everything else. And so you have this minority population that just got devastated by lead. Could you imagine? They have churches. Just go look at the videos of Flint. You couldn't imagine that happens in the United States. Not even a third world country, or that happens in the United States, where these people have to go to parking lots and just fill up their trunks full of bottled water so they can have drinking water. It was nuts. So that's going to be on there too. So don't think that Lower Mississippi River is going to be the complete focus of administration, but it's the one we're talking about because we talked about energy and chemical industry. So I know I rambled on a lot this morning. It was a morning that started off rough with technical problems, but hopefully you got something out of it. And when you go to work today, you will be like, hey, you know how we drove into the plant and it was a bunch of poor minorities all around me as I was driving. They have a voice now. They have a very powerful voice, a very loud voice now. So that's something to pay attention to. Before, who was listening? So if you have questions, emails, all that good stuff, feel free to let me know. My email is brad@adleyservices.com. You can visit our website. It's always a fun time there. I don't know what we're going to talk about next week. I really ain't got much more going on in the tour. So if you have topics you want to talk about, let's do it. And again, I challenge anybody watching this to debate me. Come on. And they say, well, what are we going to debate? You pick the topic. If you are anti-cancer, I'll be pro-cancer. Whatever. I don't care. Like, it's fun. Let's have some fun. Let's do a debate. It's got to be done early in the morning because we can't do regs and bacon if we do it in the afternoon. So again, if you think you're up for the challenge, we'll get it on here. I'll do the technical stuff, not very well, but I'll do it. And let's go for it. Email me at brad@adleyservices.com. So we originally going to try to do the show on Thursday mornings. Unfortunately, I got to go out in the field Thursday morning, so I won't be able to do that. So we did it on Tuesday. So I'll give you advance notice next week about when we're going to do it. But you can usually bank on Thursday mornings for the show coming out. So again, I'm Brad with Adley Services. I hope today brought a little more understanding or gave you something to talk about the water cooler, about Mr. Michael Reagan, Joe Biden, and Cancer Alley. So again, email me any questions. Otherwise, I'm out of coffee. I'm out of things to talk about, and you are out of time. So be safe, and I'll